Hey, this is Mike Sachs. I have a treat for you today. And no, it's not the news that I was just found innocent at the Chuck E. Cheese's murder disaster of 1992, although I was. This is even better. A few months ago, I went on a popular self-help podcast called You, But Better. And it's probably the most popular self-help podcast ever created. And apparently it's been downloaded more than 200 million times. I was handed the script by the people who run You But Better. So today's episode of Doing It is a bit different. It is my interview that had run on the podcast You But Better. Now these guys who started the podcast, Seph and Lex, and that's Seph, S-E-P-H, and Lex, have been doing this for years, and they've become very rich and successful from it. They record their podcasts in a hidden underground studio called the Buddha Pod. And that's not the Buddha Pod, it's the Buddha Pod. And they have dozens of sponsors, including a shirt made out of dirt that protects your microbiome, and a mail-order tea company called the 10,000 Teas a Month Club. That's the kind of podcast this is. These guys are not messing around. I think you're going to love this interview because we get deep into the creative process, and I open up about some things that I have not discussed publicly before. We talk about my writing and why I originally published some of my books anonymously and self-published. We talk about how I became an enemy of the deep state trucking industry. We talk about romance, and I give some terrific dating advice, as I always do, as a twice-divorced guy. We also talk about why cult leaders make great comedy gurus, which is something neither the comedy community nor the cult communities have really come to terms with, nor taken advantage of. Anyway, Seph and Lex have kindly offered to share the full interview with you. And when I say kindly, I mean that Seph and Lex are rich as hell, and they pay me a crap ton of money to post this interview and this introduction. So I want to be honest about that. Check out and subscribe to the You But Better podcast. It's got a lot of wisdom. Some of the wisdom is questionable. I would say much of it is questionable, but some of it is also funny. Second, this next part is important if you're a writer. You But Better and Doing It with Mike Sachs, the two podcasts, have teamed up to create a special writing contest. Now, this contest is open to all listeners who want to become better comedy writers or better humor writers or just better writers, period. It's called the Better Writer, Better You, Doing It with Mike Sachs Supreme Comedy Writing Contest. Maybe you're looking to give your writing craft a huge leap, or maybe you want to help with a specific writing project, or maybe you just have questions about your writing life and how to stop messing around and actually do the work. I am not being paid for this. I'm not charging anything. This is a contest. This is free. The grand prize winner of this contest will get some personalized coaching and feedback on their writing from me, Mike Sachs. And that's not something I've ever offered before because I am reclusive and don't like people. Beyond that, several other winners will get their questions about comedy writing answered on the air on both podcasts. Not just mine, but on both podcasts. We will also shout out your work and your comedy projects on both podcasts. I'm completely serious. By the way, this is a real contest. I thought it would be a lot of fun. It's 100% free to enter, and it only takes a minute. So if you'd like to possibly win some coaching from me or get your questions about comedy answered, then I strongly recommend you enter the contest now. The link to the contest is in the show notes. Just click the link there, follow the instructions, and that's all you need to do. Now, here is my interview with Seph and Lex on You But Better. Enjoy.
Welcome to You But Better. Interviews.
We interview the most brilliant thinkers and highest achieving badasses on the face of the planet.
I have a dream that one day
there is an indefinable, mysterious power.
70 years ago,
friends, Romans, countrymen,
you are the light of the world.
It's not just an interview.
It's the interview.
You But Better.
Hello, Better Yous. Welcome to today's interview with a very special guest, a little bit of a genius, We've got Mike Sachs here. Lex, please tell us about this brilliant gentleman.
Guys, I am so excited to tell you about Mike Sachs. He is an underground legend in the comedy community. He is a vortex of creative energy. There is a lot that you can learn from him, and we all want you to learn because we know you want to be more creative and we know you want to be funnier. Everyone can be funnier.
Of course.
So Mike Sachs, we're so honored to have him. He is a humorist, an editor, a novelist, an interviewer, and he is a man of many literary talents. He has written for Vanity Fair, Esquire, GQ, The New Yorker, The New York Times, McSweeney's, and as far as we know, there's no one he hasn't written for. Okay, so Mike is the author of several underground comedy classics, including Stinker Lets Loose, Randy, Passable in Pink, Slouchers, and Passing on the Right. Those books were all self-published in total secrecy under a cloak of shadows and misdirection. We're going to talk about that in a minute because it's important. Now, Mike's books Stinker Lets Loose and Passable in Pink were picked up on Audible with an all-star cast. John Hamm played Stinker.
Fantastic.
Passable in Pink on Audible featured Adam Scott, Rhea Seehorn, Jillian Jacobs, Bobby Moynihan, and Bob Odenkirk, among many others. Now, Mike is also known as the best comedy interviewer in the whole game, and his recent New Yorker interviews have included Vince Gilligan, Mike Judge, Kevin Nealon, and the Dalai Lama. Wow. His two comedic novels, Randy and Stinker Lets Loose, are being re-released by the big-time publisher Simon & Schuster, Archways, on January 15th, 2023. And we're so excited to talk with you, Mike. Welcome to You But Better.
I have emerged from the underground. I love that description.
Oh,
Excellent.
wow, Mike. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you like it.
That's
What
a
is,
great
by the way-
introduction. Thank you very much.
What is your emotional feeling in the comedy underground right now? Just if you had to describe it in a few words.
I would say the underground is becoming overground. I think people are producing things on their own that have a chance of going mainstream, which I love because in comedy, especially, the more control a creator has, I think the better a product will be. And for many years, creators did not have that control. I never would have been able to put out books on my own, certainly when I started. But now that I can do that, there's a tremendous amount of control and creativity that you can funnel directly into it without any gatekeeper preventing you from doing so.
I love that, Mike. I love how into control you are because I find myself a little bit obsessed with controlling things myself.
It's true.
Thanks for backing me up on that, Lex. There's lots of things that you can't control, but the more you can, the better the outcome is, I find. I think whenever I get angriest in my life, it's because there was something I couldn't control, you know?
Well, I think it's important when it comes to comedy. The best comedy has always been produced without executive control, whether it was early Simpsons or early SNL or other shows where the creators have had certainly more power than the executives. And I think that if you have executives in power, oftentimes the comedy will be sort of strained and more mainstream than it would have been otherwise. I think their sensibility oftentimes does not match ours.
You as a creator, you want that autonomy, you want that self-expression. I like to say about control, what you want to do is you want to realize that you have zero control and relinquish control and thereby control everything.
Exactly.
How would that work with books?
I have no idea.
Okay.
But that's why we want to talk to you, Mr. Mike Sachs. So first of all,
right, let me digest that.
It's always good to digest after a good meal.
Digestion is very important.
This is so important.
Lex, let me step into this for a second. Digestion is important, and if you have to step away to digest it, please do. If you need to stand up, sometimes that helps digestion. We've talked about that before.
I eat 75% of my meals standing up, and that includes my creative meals. That way I can digest better and then go for a walk.
It's true. If I'm not standing, I'm not eating. That's kind of my rule.
I love that conditional. Okay, Mike, let's talk about your new comedy books that are being re-released by Simon & Schuster. These books are underground cult classics at this point. More people need to know about them. First of all, disclaimer. Seth and I are not comedians. We are self-actualization gurus. We are thought leaders.
Okay, I was going to
We
ask.
understand mindset and life hacking at a natural and a supernatural level, but we don't know anything about what's funny or not funny. Honestly, comedy scares us to a large extent, but it also intrigues us.
True.
And we think that comedians might have special powers. So we're here to learn from you, a master of your craft.
I love
So
that
it's-
you don't know anything about comedy, but you know a lot about digestion.
We know a lot about
True.
digestion.
We take digestion very seriously, and there's no comedy in digestion.
No, not in my world.
Not in my world either. Our worlds overlap there. Okay, let's get into Stinker Lets Loose first of all. This is a novel that you originally wrote under the pseudonym James Johnston. It is a novelization of a 1970s trucker movie called Stinker Lets Loose, but the movie never existed, and neither does James Johnston. You invented all of it. Now, Seth and I we're kind of amazed at how you were able to write and release such a mighty work while not taking explicit credit for it. In my
This
opinion,
is tough for Lex and I because I demand credit.
we
often.
want credit, we ask for it, but you exhibited a Zen master level of detachment. So our question is, how did you kill your ego so much and not even credit yourself as the novelist?
I wouldn't recommend that for most writers because I think that's part of it being underground. My father was always confused by that. You wrote a book and your name isn't on it anywhere. In retrospect, I don't know if I would have. That's not true. What I like about a product like that is it's pure. Where if someone were to pick it up, they wouldn't know. Hopefully, I was hoping they would think that it was actually a used book from the late 1970s. So I wanted it to look as authentic as possible, even with the cover being a little bit crinkled. The illustrator, my wife, Danielle Deschaines, put the crinkles in to make it look like it was 40-something years old. I mean, to me, that plays into the comedy of it, where it's almost a purely found object, where if you didn't know what it was, you might be confused or tricked like Andy Kaufman's characters were if you didn't know who he was. To me, that's the best type of comedy. So that's why my name isn't on any book except for these re-releases, which Simon & Schuster felt fit to put my name on the cover. But I think at this point, the joke is out.
Well, that makes sense. And that's great that Simon & Schuster decided that you need credit this time. I appreciate both Simon and Schuster. It sounds like what you're saying is you started with a perspective where you were thinking about the reader, you were thinking about the user and their experience.
No.
Hey, Lex, let me take a stab at it. Good try though.
Thanks.
I think that based on what you've just said, you believe that jokes are for the jokester, the person who's making the joke. That's who gets the laugh. Whenever I learned about Andy Kaufman through a Jim Carrey film, I saw that he was doing lots of things that were funny solely to himself. And since nobody else knows James Johnston, that joke has to be for you. Your father didn't get it.
Well, my father, until the day he died, maybe this is what killed him. He thought Stinker Lets Loose was a real movie, honestly.
Oh, wow.
He didn't know. But that, to me, is funnier. I mean, I'm writing these books under almost a character, like a character actor would be in a film. The character of James Johnston is what I envision as being this guy who went out to Hollywood to make it as a screenwriter and then ended up having to write these novelizations, these cheap novelizations for food money. Based on these grade D movies, drive-in movies that he had, to work on. So that to me is part of the joke as well. I like the broader idea of it being a fake author, not me writing these books.
That is impressive. Do you feel like you can channel or get into the mind of James Johnston at any moment, since you've written a whole book as this person?
Yeah, I can get into these characters easier than I can get into the character of me writing. It sort of reminds me, Steve Martin once said, he said, I can't dance, but if I can dance as a character like he did in Pennies from Heaven, he can dance really well. It's easier to write as someone else, not only to get in the mind of the book and the sensibility of it, but also just to have fun with it. I mean, the margin of error is larger when it's not you writing the book. If it's bad, it's not Mike Sachs, it's James Johnston who fucked up.
That is so smart. It's like you get to pin your mistakes on another person.
I love pinning my mistakes on other people.
That is a very interesting strategy. If we were interviewing James Johnston right now, what do you think? Where do you think he would be? What would he be wearing?
He would be down in, I think he would have retired to Arizona, very small house or trailer. He is all about comfort. He would have some 70s and 80s fashion, perhaps an Aka Joe t-shirt, members only jacket. And for some reason, he wears a pocket watch. That was sort of his calling card back in Hollywood.
Wow. I pictured James, and I feel like for a moment I was with him in his trailer in Arizona.
What do you picture him as?
Whenever I see James Johnston, excuse me, I see a gentleman with swagger. I see a gentleman with just worn, leathery skin, and maybe a pack of cigarettes he smokes 2 at a time.
Yeah, I don't
I
see
see
that
a
at
legend.
all. I don't see that.
I picture a man who wears his swagger on top of his sadness.
I see that. That I can picture.
Oh, wow.
This is a guy who has a lot of failed hopes and dreams. This is a guy whose mind was zapped out in the sun in L.A., whose dreams were extinguished. And he's always had a dream to write the great movie. And he grew up with them in the 50s and 60s and even early 70s, but never had that chance. Now he thinks there might be with the internet. He might even put it out himself.
What movie do you think he wanted to write? What was James Johnston's purest vision?
His favorite movie of all time was The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson, the Hal Ashby movie. And that's what he was reaching for. In the end, he wrote a few episodes of Alf, Mama's Family, and a few other sitcoms you might not remember. But he never did have that shot at the big time.
I remember Alf very well because Alf was an expert at digestion. Do you remember how many stomachs he had?
He had 25 stomachs.
I think he had 9, but I actually like the 25 answer more.
Okay.
I think that 25 is the number of stomachs he should have had if he wanted his show to be a little bit better.
I bet James Johnston wanted Alf to have 25 stomachs, but then the bigwigs came in and they said, that's too many. Give him
Maybe
9.
that's what I'm confusing. I think I'm thinking of a goat.
Oh, that totally makes sense.
Makes sense. The goat thinking of a goat, right?
Okay, so Mike, let's get back to Stinker for a minute here. Stinker lets loose. It tells this hilarious and touching story of the world's best outlaw trucker. But here's the other thing that I liked about it. It blows the entire lid off the trucking industry. So we think that you definitely had to have made some enemies here, Mike.
You put a target on your back, Mike.
Well,
You
no.
did put a target on your back. So we're wondering, were you afraid of what the trucking industry might do to you if they found out your true identity?
Actually, I was. And there's a Easter egg in the book that actually lists my license plate. I was afraid. When I was growing up, the trucking industry was tremendously powerful. It's not as powerful as it is. There's been many times where I've almost been killed on purpose by a truck driver, not just being pushed off the road, but being fired at with guns and nunchucks.
Do you think those truckers were acting independently, or do you think some of the big time trucking industries sent their minions after you?
I don't know.
Was it top down?
Well, I think it was bottom up. I think because the CB movement is coming up strong again, and because of my CB name, I think they were sort of like out to get me. And it was just the word went out in the streets that if you see this car with this license plate, make havoc, create havoc. But I will say this, the biggest fans of the books are truckers. And John Hamm came to the project because his father in the 70s was involved with the trucking industry. And that's one of the reasons he came to this project, to play Stinker.
Fantastic.
Wow, who would have thought that somebody's trucker past would bring them to such a piece of art?
Not me.
If you had to fight a trucker, how would you do it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm an expert in Krav Maga. Have you heard of that?
Krav Maga?
Yeah.
Krav Maga?
Yeah.
Is that Tim McGraw's brand of Krav Maga?
I'm not sure, but the way I learned was from a book, Krav Maga for Dummies, and it's basically the Israeli defensive method with their special forces. And what you do is there's nothing to memorize. It's just you just go haywire, you just go berserk. Whatever you have on hand, you just use, like sand or a brick or some sort of baseball, whatever you happen to be walking cane. You just go nuts. You go haywire on them.
It's very resourceful.
Yeah.
It is resourceful. If someone thinks that you're crazier than them, they will probably disengage. I've found that both in life and in relationships.
Well, it's worked with my wife. She thinks I'm insane.
Yeah.
Wow. At least in your home, you've been able to demonstrate your true self without any pushback, it sounds like.
No,
I
I think she wants to believe I'm insane. I mean, that's how we met. I put that on my OkCupid profile.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? What else did you put on your OkCupid profile?
Yeah. Do you remember any one-liners from it?
I put down that I was a ventriloquist.
Ooh.
I put down that I love women and women love me.
That's a good piece of
I
feedback.
put
to
down
give
that
people.
women are catnip for the kitty cat. I'm the kitty cat.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So
that's good.
Whatever
That's a
I
good
did
one.
worked tremendously because I got myself a beautiful bride.
And you
Plus,
married
women
an
really
illustrator.
love cat metaphors.
That's true.
Well, I love
Women
cats.
do love cat
They
men.
do, though. They're cat people. And I also told her, which was the truth, that I own 45 cats in an 800 square foot apartment, and that turned her on.
That's
Wow.
That's quite a feat, though. I mean, I've had a few cats in my house, and to get that many cats in any space,
Well,
you have to be willing to share.
Not all of them are still alive.
Rest in
That makes
peace.
sense.
I would love to get into this origin story. Mike, my belief is that every person can be great because they come from specific circumstances that bear their greatness fruit. Where do you come from?
I should say I don't believe that. I think most people are mediocre, and I think it's really up to that 1%. And you don't always know if you're 1%, but you really have to push through. I mean, that's why
That's true.
one of my things that I always tell, a piece of advice that I tell to young writers is, you may be a mediocrity, you may be a piece of shit, but you don't know until you try, and you really have to try every day. And if at the end of your career, end of your life, you look back and you're still a piece of shit and still a mediocrity, then so be it. At least you tried.
Exactly. You have to have the whole life to know whether or not you are a complete piece of shit.
Right.
Because you could be a piece of shit that turns into a piece of gold.
Right, that's right, and you don't know until you do. So with that said, I would say only 1% turn into gold. What was your question?
We want to know, what is your origin story?
Yeah. Where do you come from? Where do you go, Mike?
I come my origin story. I grew up in Northern Virginia and Maryland outside D.C. My father was an endodontist, which means he practiced root canals. And
Did he ever practice them on you?
he did. There are photographs of him giving me 2 root canals. Both times I fell on the playground. Now, when you're a kid and your pulp dies, the root dies, usually it's just pulled. But I had an in. My father was an endodontist, so he took me to his office, performed a root canal, 2 root canals, and the baby teeth were saved. I used to work in his office over summers, and it's one of my fondest memories is working in that office. I was in charge of developing the X-rays and taking the patients from the waiting room into the surgical area. And he was a very sweet guy, very kind, and they were always very nervous, but he put them at ease with comedy. He was a big fan of comedy, and I think that's where I first saw the effect that comedy can have on people.
Would you call your father one of your great comedy heroes?
I would. Yeah. It was his birthday yesterday, actually. He has since passed away, but he was a very funny guy. I don't think he always understood what I was doing he called it new comedy. Like he would refer to new math or something. But he was very supportive, kept all the pieces I wrote. and found something to like in each of the projects.
Good for him.
Well, it sounds like even though your dad may not have gotten everything you've done, he really appreciated it. And one thing that I respect about your dad is that he saved your baby teeth. Did he save anything else that didn't make sense?
He saved my virginity. He convinced me to wait until my second marriage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what ended your first one.
Well, I saved myself for my third wife, but I ended up falling to weakness with my second. I'm on my third now, but she understands.
She's forgiven you for your past.
So you have an alternation method where you alternate between celibacy and non-celibacy.
That's not a bad idea. Every other marriage, I have sex.
Yeah.
We call it sexual fasting, and we do it occasionally. Sometimes our partners make the decision for us, but we are sexual fasters ourselves.
Does that have to do
We
with
believe in-
sexual digestion?
It's very important to
Yes.
give your digestion a break, and the way you give your digestion a break is with fasting.
Okay.
Yes. Sexual fasting saves you from so many different ailments we have. Maybe we have, a little, small, small feeling of like inadequacy.
Yeah.
I see. Well, that was worth the wait.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I've been fucking like a monkey recently. I should put a halt to things, see if it clears my head a little bit. I haven't been as conducive to creativity since I've been,
Try the fast, try an intermittent fast, try a sexual fast for a while, followed by a sexual buffet. See how that clears your system.
Ooh, okay. I've been trying espresso enemas, and that's been working, but I'll try something new. Well, I think women. Well, this is another thing I put on the OkCupid profile, which I think might have turned off some women, but turned on as many women. I put down that I like to fuck like a monkey, and I think a lot of people were confused. Truthfully, when I did put it down, I didn't even know what it meant myself. When it came time to first fuck like a monkey, though, I came through like a champ. What you have to do is you have to act that there's a lodestar, that only you see a sexual lodestar, and you have to fuck your way towards that lodestar, much like a monkey would in a primitive jungle.
Oh, that's so spiritual.
I think that's the way that cult leaders, not that I'm comparing you to a cult leader, I think that's what cult leaders do too. They see that lodestar and they move towards it, and then anyone that's attracted to that filters their way in. Anyone who's not filters their way out.
I'm all for it. I'm a big fan of Rainier, the head of the sex cult. Have you seen this guy?
No.
Oh, he's such a
No, but we're interested.
such a cool dude. I mean, just you take a look at him, you think this guy just has it all. I mean, he's now in Rikers Island, but he would, for a while he was really the king, and he would, fuck towards his own lodestar. Unfortunately, he was a psychotic and a sociopath, but he knew what he wanted and he got it.
You have to take the bad with the good. And we've always said on You But Better, we're not saying you should be a cult leader, but we are saying you should learn from them.
Yes, there's a lot to learn.
So much to learn.
My belief is that a cult leader is a superhero who has maybe turned into a villain. They've gone a little too far, but it is good to have cult leader energy, because cult leaders, they take you places that you never thought you'd go.
I guess.
We actually released a digital product called Cult Leader Energy.
Well, I have to say this. I think Jim Jones, I'm alone in this, but I think he's been misunderstood.
For those of you who don't know, Jim Jones, of course, was an American preacher who led the People's Temple. This was a cult in the 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
He actually had his followers, we would never do this to You Better Use, he had his followers move to a jungle commune in Guyana where he orchestrated a mass suicide in 1978, and that's what we're talking about here.
I think more than anything, he was shy.
Oh, what gives you that opinion?
Just the way his eyes looked in that final video. A lot of people saw madness or drug addiction. I saw a little boy who wasn't good at socializing. And also, I should say this very funny guy, Jim Jones.
Really? Did Jim Jones have a comedy album or anything?
No, but a terrific sense of humor. Very, very funny.
Interesting.
I always thought Kool-Aid was an odd choice, a bit of an absurd choice.
That was the joke. It wasn't Kool-Aid. It was a not cheap knockoff called Flavor Aid.
Oh,
Do you see what I mean now about him being funny?
That is pretty funny.
Yeah.
That was unexpected.
He had a wicked sense of humor, deliciously wicked.
And also, I feel a little bad for Flavor Aid that they didn't ever get the credit for it.
I know it.
Because I've heard
I know
Kool-Aid
it.
my whole life.
Kool-Aid sales went through the roof after that. Guyana. Flavor Aid, no one knows about it anymore.
Wow.
Maybe some of these drink companies need more. They need more cult leaders as spokespeople.
I mean, like Mr. Pibb, some cult leader that dishes out Mr. Pibb.
Exactly. My thoughts exactly.
It'd be nice if there was a Mr. Pibb to do the leading, actually.
That would be pretty cool.
Maybe I could take it on, not me, but someone could take it on as a moniker, like you've done with James Johnson.
Well, listen.
Yeah, we don't advocate soda drinking and we don't advocate sugar, but that being said, it's a good idea.
That is a kick-ass idea. A guy who changes his name to Mr. Pibb and starts a cult and then doses his followers with the Mr. Pibb. Wow,
Yeah,
guys.
but the turn is he's been giving them Dr. Pepper the whole time.
Shoot. Or one of the cheap
and
knockoffs.
they didn't even know.
Like
Yeah, the cheap
Dr.
knockoff
Schwartz or something, the type you see in the
yeah.
dollar store.
Dr. Thunder.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to tell the difference because I have not had any soda since I was a teenager, so I've completely lost the taste for it.
Why?
I don't believe in sugar and I don't believe in carbonation.
He has immaculate teeth as well.
Anyway, Mike, we don't want to lose the chance here to talk about Randy.
Oh, Randy. Oh,
Randy.
what a story.
This book is a memoir that tells the life story of Randy S. He is a DC area man with a lot of strong opinions and tastes. In that sense, not unlike yourself. Strong opinions about the best foods, the best bands, how to score with the ladies, that kind of thing. Now, a lot of young men, they probably look up to Randy and think he's a role model. Personally, I see the potential in that because Randy's very confident, but I also see the danger in it because Randy seems complacent to me. He doesn't meditate. He doesn't do gratitude journaling. He doesn't practice yoga. He never talks about superfoods, and I doubt he even listens to this podcast. So my question is, what do you hope a young man in his 20s would learn from Randy, role model-wise?
Well, first of all, he's still going to spring break, and he's now 34. So I think it's one of those things. I grew up with people like this. They just like to have fun. There's no overthinking anything. There's no being depressed about where they are or are not in life. They just live life, go to their job, go to the sports bar at night, and come home and watch 2.5 Men. They're very,
Very present.
very present, very content. And I kind of envy that. I mean, I knew people like this. I used to work retail in Maryland and Virginia. And they're, they had simpler needs, let's just say, and they liked certain things that I found a little mainstream, but they were just very, very happy and content and fun to be around. There was no bitching, there was no complaining. And I always sort of enjoyed that. I always admired that. And it was just, these were good guys, loyal, not the brightest in some cases, but very loyal and very fun to be around.
It sounds like a very good time Randy might be, but my question is, how can he find any self-fulfillment without trying to grow?
Exactly.
Without trying to improve himself. Is this good enough for Randy?
I don't know.
Do you feel like Randy lives in you?
A little bit.
Mike?
I think I could still be back in Maryland living that life very easily. Whether I'd be happier now, I don't think so. I don't know. But I mean, that's what I grew up with, and that's it's just what I knew. And there were two DCs that I like to say. There was wonky and honky, and I grew up in the honky aspect of it. The wonky would be lawyers and politicians and lobbyists, and then the honky were just like blue collar guys that worked retail and played softball, and then went to hoops to watch the O's play, and they were just very content, and that was their lives. They didn't necessarily, they weren't always hungry for attention like a lot of people I know in New York, and they didn't have their ups and downs if they weren't being published or weren't achieving the success that they always wanted, because they did achieve. This was their success. They have a steady job and they have a wife or girlfriend, and they're just living life, and I like that.
that makes me think of the yin yang. That makes me think of the Tao Te Ching. That makes me think of the ultimate dualities that run through the universe. So here's my question. Could you take the intellect and the drive of a wonky and the natural ease and sexual confidence of a honky and combine them into some kind of a superhuman?
Can I ask you guys a personal question?
Absolutely.
What do you guys see before you? Who are you looking at? You're looking at me.
I think I'm looking
Yes.
right at you, Mike. Am I looking at a wonky honky?
You're looking at a wonky honky.
Oh my God. It was so obvious.
Right.
Mike, as a wonky honky, what is it that keeps you thriving, surviving, and your heart still driving?
Well, I like sentences that rhyme like that. I think it's very...
I do too.
Me too. For me, if it rhymes, it feels good. It feels
I'm
right.
a sucker for any...
I thought you were about to say something else there.
I'm a sucker for any movie where they have a guy at one point, typically military, who'll say something like "smack it, jack it, and whack it." That's what I'm thinking of in this case. It just feels good. It's like a melody that hits a pleasant note when you rhyme.
It's easy. A mantra's easier to remember if it rhymes.
Memorable.
It's like song
Wonky,
lyrics.
honky, and bonky.
Bonky.
Bonky of the wonky.
Bonky makes me think of a caveman. So you're talking
Yep.
about combining the intellect and drive of a politician, the natural ease of a honky, and the sort of primal instinct and fighting abilities of a caveman.
That's incredible. Yeah. Yep.
So that makes me wonder, Mr. Mike Sachs, are you not just a wonky honky? Are you a wonky honky bonky?
I think
or are you just
the
a wonky
more
honky?
I think about it, the more I think I'm a wonky, honky, bonky, zonky. Now, zonky would zonky is Zionistic.
Oh, my
That's
God.
a Zionist who's a wonky, bonky, honky.
Oh my God. What a strong, specific person.
Can you imagine that movie? Wonky, bonky, honky, zonky. Like, how great would that be?
That would be good. I don't think I personally think that is not only an excellent idea, but that idea is so evolved and so specific that very few people would understand it.
Well, maybe I shouldn't have said it if it's that specific. I've noticed a lot of people steal these ideas that I come out with. And if that one's stolen, I'm going to go haywire because that's a good one.
Mike, what is your protocol when someone steals something that you make, something great? I've said lots of things that I'm pretty sure people have just lifted straight from my consciousness.
Yeah.
I find myself irate until I can be present and breathe through it. How do you combat somebody stealing one of your brilliant ideas?
Krav Maga. I should say this too before I go on. Krav Maga is different than Krav Maga, which is the official. So Krav Maga is my own version of this, which has been copyrighted. But
You've pioneered
Krav
that.
Maga, right? But when someone does steal something, I go Krav Maga on them, and anything can happen.
You
I
physically
assault them. I go bananas, and anything can happen, and anything will happen. So if you steal that wonky, honky, zonky, bonky ideas, I'm going to go bananas.
We have no intention of getting our asses handed to us Krav Maga style.
By Mike's bonky side.
Right, that's pure bonky right there.
That's pure bonky. That's a pure caveman.
That's right. And then when I
spirit.
go home at
that-
night and have soup, that's my zonky side. That's my Zionistic side. It's my Jewish
Oh
side.
yeah, a nice Zionistic
Yeah.
soup. I haven't enjoyed one of
A
those. in
good
very
Hebrew
long time.
soup.
As
You
someone
brewed
with
for your
Jewish
pleasure.
ancestry, I love to combine the promotion of the Jewish people in the state of Israel along with other spiritual aspects. I love that.
Yeah, I think it helps. It can't hurt. If your lodestar, in this case, spiritually, is something that doesn't exist but didn't exist 3,000 years ago, you're better off.
Wow. Yeah, and you're saying Lone Star or a Lodestar?
Lodestar.
Lodestar. Yeah.
Can you tell me what a lodestar
Honestly,
is?
I don't know. I heard about it years ago and thought it was a great word. I don't know what it means, but I think it implies something to go towards.
A star that's fully loaded,
I don't know.
perhaps.
Kind of like a fully loaded plate of nachos, but it's a star. It's got all the
I
fixings.
don't know.
Well, Mike, you know, I want to take it in another direction because I am grateful for your service. You've given a great service to the people who've read your work, heard your words. And on this podcast, we've often said, I mean, we didn't invent this. I'll give credit to whoever said this first. I don't know who did it, but they can take credit. Laughter is the best medicine. So my question is, how many people do you think that you have personally healed? And also, how many people do you have to heal to feel like a book or article is funny enough?
It's funny you mention this because what I've been doing recently is showing up at hospitals without permission and heading straight from the oncology ward, seeing if I can cure them.
I love that. So much initiative.
Unfortunately, it hasn't been as effective as I thought. Part of it is I play Mississippi Delta blues, which is not that fun for those who might be dying. It's also
Another Kaufman-esque
right.
choice.
I'm big into puns, and I've noticed people in hospices and those who are dying in hospitals aren't the biggest fans. I'm not quite sure if it's their brains being a little zapped from the chemotherapy, like a little cloudy, but their comedy IQ isn't as high as it could be. So
Sometimes, though, I found that when someone gives you a pained look after a pun, they're laughing on the inside.
okay, but I tried that too, and it killed someone as I was sitting there recording. You can see that on my YouTube channel.
Wow. That must have been incredible to see the extent of your own powers that you could end
It
a
felt
life.
good. I have to be honest with you. I mean, I hear about comedy helping people, comedy killing people, not metaphorically, literally killing people. I got an erection. You never feel better. I've never felt stronger than I did those 15 or 16 times.
Mike, have you ever taken a moment to think maybe killing that person was healing them?
Yes. I mean, they're off to a better place. I am there to provide it. There's no reason for them to be hooked up to a million drugs and machines and needles. If they need to go, and if they're not allowed to go, sometimes I can just see it in their eyes. Basically, they're saying, do me a favor and finish me off with your laughter, with your jokes, with your puns. And I'll do it. I don't wait twice. I don't need to be asked twice.
We don't often get asked, we don't often find ourselves being called to finish someone off. But when we do get that call, it's important that we do it.
It is the most important call that you could ever answer. Always pick up that phone.
Well, I do. I have a special 1-800 number. If someone does want to die and they want to be laughing as they do so, all you have to do is dial this 1-800 number.
Well, we'll definitely put that in the episode description.
It's
so that
1-800 wonky zonky.
Wow.
Oh, wow. It's the wonky side and the zonky
I think it's actually
side.
just wonky zonk. I think the Y was cut off. 1-800 wonky zonk.
They do that sometimes with
Yeah.
1-800 numbers where they list extra
Exactly.
letters, and then you've already dialed the number and you're like,
And
what's
it's
going on
ringing.
right now? I hear it going through, but there's still more numbers to dial. That can really mess
That's
with your
totally
head.
fucked up. That's why I tried to avoid. That's why I spent extra on this 1-800 number.
It's manipulative.
I don't know what that means.
It is, but it is a pattern interruption so that someone comes onto that call and they're already a bit destabilized, which sets them up for the killing joke.
I never thought of it that way. That's very smart.
Better use, we will put this 1-800 number in the show notes. However, we would urge you to only call the 1-800 number if you're truly ready.
Yeah, if you feel like your spirit is ready to pass through onto the next comedic phase, do it.
But listen, I wanted to ask you, are you guys into business? Do you guys like money?
We make money as effortlessly as breathing.
Can I intrigue you with a business opportunity?
I'm open.
We're open but selective, but go ahead.
Have you heard of this magical fruit called acai?
Acai. I mean, I have absolutely gone to town on an acai bowl from time to time. So absolutely all superfoods, all superfruits we are well acquainted with. Everything from acai to goji berries to pomegranates.
The reason I ask is
Absolutely.
I have 10,000 bottles of acai juice in my basement. All you have to do is buy a few thousand of those. It's then up to you to sell them at whatever price you want. Now, if you get more people involved, the more money you make, because then you get a cut of their sales. It's called acai you later.
That's the name of your product.
Yes, the company is called acai you later.
I do have a question, which is how did you come across this acai and why is it sitting in your house?
Okay, because
unused?
I was told that this was a good business opportunity, and I ended up buying 10,000 bottles, $10 a piece. But I don't want. I
is a
didn't
good
put any
price.
effort in. If you get as much out of it as you put into it, so if you guys are ready to make some money, I have the bottles for you. I have the name for you. I have the copyright for you. Everything's ready to go. All you need to do is send me some money.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do, Mike. I personally am not doing physical products right now. We do digital products because we are extremely online. However, what we're going to do is we're going to put instructions for how anyone can buy that
that'd be
acai.
terrific. Yeah.
We have literally over 100,000 entrepreneurs that follow this
Whoa.
podcast. We'll put those instructions in the show notes. Those acai bottles are going to be gone probably within 6 to 8 hours of this
That'd
podcast
be
going live.
terrific.
if
Because I
not
got to be
sooner.
honest, writing does not pay the bills, and I am miserable. I first read about you guys, by the way, in the Amtrak magazine, the ones they give away in the Amtrak.
Yes, I loved doing that interview.
You came across like real idiots, but I have to say there was a spark
Oh.
that I thought, you know what, if they ever do ask me to be on, I would never deign to ask them to be on. But if they ever were to ask me to be on, I'll just say yeah, because why not? They had something to those photos you guys took at the water park too were very interesting.
We try to relate as much as possible, not just to the higher elements of humanity, but also to the common man.
And we know the common
And
man.
we ask ourselves, what do commoners like? Trains.
Water parks. Those are the things that we wanted to make sure we
Those
got
were the
across.
main two things that came to mind. So we said, why don't we talk about water parks in an interview for the Amtrak magazine?
Yeah.
That was a little marketing scheme that's worked out well for us.
Yeah, guys, I would love to sit around and chat, but I have to go into the other room and I have to television.
You have to teleport?
Television.
Oh, yes.
Television.
Understood. We definitely understand that you have to set your time aside as necessary, and television, television programming has parameters.
Yeah.
Let us before we let you go, let us ask you two quick things. Parting word of advice for our millions of listeners, our better yous. A lot of them want to be inspired. They want to be more creative. You are obviously a master of creativity. What is a simple way for someone to get started? Maybe writing something funny, being a little bit more creative. One simple hack they can use.
Don't
do it.
No. I'm miserable. I'm broke and miserable.
Oh, okay. Reverse psychology. I get it. Very
That's
nice.
good.
Very
There's
nice.
nothing revert. I'm truly miserable. I mean, if writing is the career you want to get into, I feel sorry for you.
It is working
That-
so hard.
That is, I hear your words of encouragement through the reverse psychology. That is honestly brilliant. Okay, Stinker, Let's Loose, and Randy are being re-released. Simon & Schuster on January 15th. Folks can get that anywhere books are sold, right?
I'm not sure. I also have a third book out, which is a parody of a college catalog called Welcome to Woodmont. And that
Welcome to Woodmont.
And has blurbs from Jerry Stahl, Jack Handy, and many other comedy legends.
Wow, how did you get linked up with these other geniuses? Do y'all have a men's meeting you go to every month?
Mastermind Network.
Hey guys, I said I had to go watch television, and I meant it.
Okay, very sorry.
Understood.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Mike Sachs, for being such an insightful guest.
Sweetheart, do you have my dinner ready yet?
Better use. Mike had to go watch TV, but check out the show notes for links to all of his books and that 1-800 number where he'll kill you. You, but better. Friends, thank you for listening and becoming a better you.
And if you haven't followed us on social media yet, you haven't fully committed. Find those social links in the episode description.
Also, please rate and review us on your podcast listening app. It helps more people find this podcast and become totally enlightened.
And remember, don't just be you, be
You, but better.